Hello and welcome to the Trans Agenda, a podcast by TransClinique. I'm your host, Niko, and I'm a trans man and my pronouns are he and they. Every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll be right here talking about the Trans Agenda. In this podcast, we'll delve into the unique challenges and experiences of trans folks, highlighting the voices of those who have lived it themselves. We'll explore issues such as navigating medical and legal systems, finding acceptance within family and community, and combating discrimination and violence. Our guests will share their personal stories and expertise, providing valuable insights and perspectives on this often misunderstood aspect of the human experience. Join us as we strive to educate, inform, and advocate for trans rights and visibility. Hello, and welcome to the Trans Agenda. This is GATSBY, if you want to introduce yourself.
Well, I'm GATSBY, he, him, and they, them is also appropriate for me grammatically. And yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to be here and get into it.
Yeah, so tell us, GATSBY, a little bit. So I know you're a graphic designer, but you're also a photographer. Yeah. You're a stylist as far as I'm concerned. Like, if you want to tell us a little bit about, like, what do you do, you know?
Ooh, well, I'm an artist by trade, so I do graphics, I do photography. I'm not so much of a stylist, but I really do appreciate that. I do know how to coordinate some clothes and put together some looks and things like that. But I think I've always just made art, and it's just something that kind of came, like, you know, naturally for me to express myself in that kind of way. So I try to do so many things and kind of keep it fresh for me.
Yeah, so a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is honestly business, trans people in business. And so we've kind of been, you know, doing a lot of gigs together for a while now. You know, it's hard out here, but
that's true.
It is great too. So if you want to tell us a little bit about, like, how has your journey as a trans person been being an artist? You know what I mean?
I think it's been relatively difficult to navigate certain spaces. There are benefits depending on where you're working. Like, I think us working with each other, we do a lot of community, you know, events, but outside of that, like, I work in so many different spaces, and I think sometimes it feels like every step you're taking is groundbreaking when you're out of community doing the work.
For real. That's a great way to put it.
Everything is a trophy.
Yeah.
Because just existing in those spaces and sometimes being at least for me, it's like I'm the only guy that's out there doing it, or, you know, the only trans person, let alone doing it, or sometimes even all those things, those intersectional things connecting. Sometimes I'm the only black person, you know, doing it, and those, you know, it puts you in a very interesting space when you're working with people, because you have to be aware of, you know, your transness and sometimes how you show up in spaces, as well as, like, being hyper aware of everybody around you. So for me, it's pretty fun, but sometimes a little nerve-wracking, because it's like I'm trying to just work and not let it always be about that. But I'm aware that we have to move forward, and sometimes you have to be the only person there to get those things done. Yeah. And get resources for other community members. So I'm glad to do it. It's just, you know, it's a very interesting challenge. This is a unique experience for me.
Yeah, and, you know, I did have Kane on here, and he was talking about how he does a lot of commercial work, and so he is very familiar with that, but his journey was a little different because he didn't come out until he kind of already had his established career. So it was kind of like opposite to you and me a little bit. But so contrasting the spaces that you work in that are, I don't know what you want, cis, whatever type of spaces. How is it working in community as a trans person with your intersectionalities, as a trans man, as a black trans person? Like, what is that like in community?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I have to acknowledge, like, where some of my privilege comes in, because I definitely think even in some trans spaces, I'm not always read as trans, which for some people is like a blessing, and sometimes it's a curse, and it's kind of a mix for me. So I feel like I've grown and I've learned, you know, what it means to really be visible in these spaces with other trans folks, and how to, you know, kind of like give myself that confidence and boost myself up. You know, maybe in certain spaces there might be a space, like, I've been in so many places where I'm the only, like, black and masculine person, and that in itself is very interesting, because you know, if you're not being read as trans, but you're also like in those spaces with other trans folks, sometimes I think they just don't understand it. Sometimes I think they just think I'm like this cis ally that just showed up to hang out and party. It's like good, like for me it is a gender affirming insult.
Right.
Like, however, it doesn't help the visibility if you don't think that there's even a possible chance that there could be a Black trans man here.
How do you stay connected to community? Like, you know, because I can relate. Like, people don't always know that I'm trans in community spaces, and sometimes I'll get the looks like, "What are you doing here?" You know, or people are, you know, just treating me definitely differently than they did when I was a lesbian. You know, but how do you stay connected with community despite those things, or do you? You know.
I feel like I'm getting better at that. I feel like I'm not always the most vocal person. Oftentimes in my trans masculinity, there's this thing where people want you to announce it. They want you to be so overtly out because they're so unaware. So I'm thinking I'm doing better at being vocal in different ways. Sometimes it's not just having a conversation with folks. Sometimes I just kind of pop up in trans only spaces and I just take up space that way. And if I do have the opportunity to like engage with folks that I choose, I kind of let them know, like, I'm like, hey, there's other people, like, we're all in this together. It may not be exactly the same because all of our transness is unique, but, you know, it's important that we engage with each other and, you know, let it be known that we all have so many different experiences and we should listen to each other more. So I think that's where I'm at with it. I'm trying to, you know, listen more as well as, you know, speak out for not just myself, but also I think about there's other people who, you know, they need to see that because I didn't have that growing up. And
it's a practice in like vulnerability, right? Because to be seen, like to really be seen, I think a lot of, for me, maybe I'll just speak for myself, I kind of, you know, it's easier to hide and to not really be known because as soon as people know, they can judge you and they can, you know, this is something every trans person goes through probably. But to have that choice and to choose to be seen can be a big step, you know. So how did you come out? Tell us a little bit. I know maybe there was a, you know, maybe not just a one-time thing, but tell us a little bit about how you came to be Gatsby.
Ooh, that's hard. I mean, I feel like I tell people this all the time and it kind of sounds like a little funny, I think, for our community, where I feel like I have a very binary experience. In coming out, I feel like it was a transition of being read as like a young child that was like a girl to being a little boy very quickly for me. Like that, or at least that's, I think that's the best way I can put it. I felt like there was a moment, like I went to Catholic school. I come from a semi-religious based family. We're not Catholic, we're more so on like the Baptist side, but there were so many moments in Catholic school where they really make it very clear that there's a separation between genders for them. It's very like you're either a little boy or a little, you know, girl, and you don't break away from those things. And I found myself very conflicted super early. Like I could say probably from the first grade I was already conflicted once they were like, okay, well, you go over there to the right because, you know, that's for you. And I'm looking over to the left, you know, where the boys are. Like, I think I'm supposed to be over there. I don't know what. Like, I couldn't even explain it. It was so crazy. It was like, this is not for me. This is just not it. I'm not with it's not even the femininity. A lot of people have an aversion. I can just speak for myself, I suppose. There comes a space where you might have an aversion to some of those feminine things. Like, it might be a color. It might be, for me, it was like, it was the opportunity to decide. It was skirts versus pants and jumpers. We had jumpers as well, kind of for people maybe not wearing jumpers.
Oh, right, because in Catholic school they have like uniforms.
Yeah, so it's like you're in this little overall dress kind of situation, and I was like, absolutely not. Like, give me those pants.
Because you were a style icon from the beginning.
A little bit. You know, we didn't have too many options. It was a white shirt, blue pants, or whatever, but. Yeah, and sometimes we got to dress up, they give you a little cardigan or something. As long as you kept it in line, it had to be a way. But for me, it was those small choices just affirmed me and let me know, like, hey, it's going to be masculinity and men stuff from this point on, like little boy stuff from this point on. I feel like I came out so many times and maybe it wasn't read very well. I think there's this concept, especially for my community, I'm talking about my black folks, where it's like, it can't be that. It has to be tomboy. It has to be, they'll find all types of ways to just not make it a gendered thing. It's like you're a little girl or a femme person being read as, oh, you're just trying this out, or oh, maybe you like skater kid or something. You just want to wear the hat because of that, or be Avril Lavigne.
I was in my head. I was like Avril Lavigne.
Yeah, it's like they have to put something else to it. It can never be all the way.
Yeah.
And so I was writing letters. I was male identifying online. Any opportunity I could have. So I feel like I came out. It almost felt like I was coming out every few years. I just wasn't maybe getting heard. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think both you and I, we came to be people in the digital age, right? So I remember being on Tumblr. Yeah, definitely. And and I know from what you've told me, there's like some community building that went on. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Tumblr was very unique. It was like the trans community was definitely in effect, but I don't think we were using the terms trans exclusively for men. It was like it took me so long to find like other just masculine trans folk in general, but we did get to a point where it was like me and a couple other folks where we were like building the hashtags or building the tags and being like, okay, are we gonna call ourselves like like it's like trans men was still less popular than I'll say the terms like FTM or how some people use AFAB. I know it's a discourse around those terms, but I will say like that F tag was definitely going up. So we would tag ourselves and we would try to get featured on pages. Tumblr had this really interesting thing where there was collaborative pages and you could submit photos of yourself to be featured. So I would feature myself on any men's tag, like if they had a black boy tag, men's tag, California men, California boys, young guys, whatever the collaborative events were, like I was putting myself in there. And over time, I think a lot of guys would build community around that because we kind of were finding each other even if we weren't all the way out yet. So you kind of make mutuals. Sometimes we talk about trans stuff specific and you'll go through the tags and then it's like, oh, I've now found community. I found people within the same, what some people call it a niche, like kind of thing. Like it wasn't about specifically like Masc stuff. Like it wasn't about shooting up testosterone or anything. It was like we kind of all like the same type of music or we had the same kind of vibe, and it's like secret little tags like and it's like we built that minor community in this like marginalized like space. So it was cool, and the queer tags were going up too. I have to give it up to all the queer community because we definitely took over those spaces too.
Yeah, I was definitely on lesbian Tumblr. You know what I mean? So
through lesbian Tumblr, there were a lot of guys that came from that. I wasn't necessarily. I will say I'm not on the lesbian tags all the time, but I noticed like even some people identifying more so as like stud, like they would mix the tags and then slowly just became a trans tag. Like it would just be like, oh, this is where all the guys are hanging out. Right. So I love that.
I mean, that's like identity, right? So it's kind of like a gradient. What do you think about the evolution of that online community to today? Because it's definitely changed in the and both you and I, we spend a lot of time connecting with other trans Masc folks online through the calendar, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But, what's your observations?
I think it's a lot easier these days.
Yeah.
I got to give it up to them. I love that for them. I wish I had that when I was younger. I wish it was like I could go online and once I knew it was like trans men or trans Masc, I could just type it in and I have hundreds of guys showing up or whoever you're looking for, those type of opportunities. It's now I think we've gotten better terminology. Some people have a feeling about that. I personally feel like some of it is helpful and some of it is harmful because with the visibility and all the tags comes all the people who are also sometimes looking to harm and not always physically. I'm talking about like argue. Like some people get on trans tags to argue all day. And I think we didn't always have that when I was growing up in the digital age. Like I remember dial-up. I remember when the internet was first booming and couldn't be on the phone at the same time. Because, it gotta run. So now it's like, oh, I could be on my phone and be on the internet and look up stuff and get information in a second. That is amazing.
Twitter fingers and the secret Twitter fingers in the room. Yeah.
That is so crazy to me. I love that.
Yeah. So, GATSBY and I, we met at the Transcend retreat and, pretty soon thereafter, a group of trans masks and me and Gatsby, we decided to start the Bay Area Trans Mask Calendar.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Ooh. I mean, the Bay Area Trans Mask Calendar, it's an all trans mask, coordinated project. So it's all shot and edited and, produced by only trans masculine individuals. It's only trans masculine people in the calendar. So it's something that we created, for us, by us. And when I say for us, for the sake of our visibility, because anybody can consume the calendar and we would love that. But it's just something really amazing. You oftentimes don't get to see all of us come together, and we're all diverse. We all look so different, and we represent so many different things. So it's just beautiful to see that kind of intersectionality, like just come together with all of my bros. Like, it's beautiful. Yeah. It's something that I never thought was possible. I know that there's other type of projects, collections and things, but it just means a lot to have us all come together, and really you can see so many different folk and like really see yourself in all these different people. Like, I see myself in everybody, it's
right.
And that's something that is just so precious. I really love this project.
Through the camp, you can see reality. Yeah. So, we've talked about a lot today. There's a couple of questions I like to ask everybody. Yeah. The first one is, what advice would you give like a younger trans person or a younger version of yourself who is kind of trying to find their way and trying to connect with community?
Oof. I mean, I'm a little radical, so
let's go.
I think my first bit of advice is that people should definitely take the time to really get to know what they like and what they need when it comes to their identity. Nobody can tell you what your identity is supposed to look like, and it's impossible to really put it into words, I'd say. But that's one of the main things that helped me when I was younger. I got to a point where I said, I gotta do me. I have to live my life. Nobody can live their life for me, and I already know, like, I'm still finding out who I am, but I just know what felt right. And for some people, I think, we all go through these different spaces where we may not know right away, and it's okay to explore that. And I think that is the first thing is, like, do not be afraid to strike out on your own and just try to figure it out. Say, hey, I have this feeling, or I have this way, and I'm still trying to sort it out and explore it. And that's the most thing. My second radical thing is, like, burn it down, burn it all down, burn down the expectations, burn down the concept, especially for my trans masculine folks. Like, burn down the idea that your masculinity has to be one way. You can definitely still have your balance, whether that's feminine and masculine or just anything. Everybody looks so different, and like masculinity to you is not going to look the same way that it looks to me. So that's the main thing. I think we have to give people way more spaces to explore and really get that. There's so many restrictions and so many things, like, don't get caught up in the images, because I think now that you can see so many folk, like, some people think they have to look a certain way. They got to be the most jacked up, buff, in quotations, like, passable person, like, to fit into this cis normative society. And that's definitely not the wave. Like, you got to strike out on your own, because at the end of the day, the only person with you 24/7 is you. So
right, it's kind of malignified, right? With social media. So that's true. That's amazing advice. And then the second question that I like to ask everybody: what is your trans agenda?
Oh Lord. I'm trying to think. There's so many. I'm like, the fire's in my head. But my trans agenda is, at the end of the day, like, I'm gonna show up and be me, and I'm all for supporting community and giving us access to way more spaces. We all need to take up way more space, and especially for my masculine individuals, take up way more space. Come together, come hang out, stand around, and let us be the higher majority. Because that's something that we don't get to see. And that's not anti anybody else, not any type of anti-wave or disrespect to anybody. But at the end of the day, we have to be the change we want to see. So that's my agenda. My, opportunities that I'm getting, I'm trying to share them as much as possible with everybody else, so that other people, especially other guys and other masked folk, can see, like, that we matter too. And we're not always going to be the but and at the end of every single sentence when it comes to trans folk. So my agenda is Go for the bros.
I love it.
Every day, all day.
And buy the calendar.
Yes, always. Check out the Trans Masc calendar specifically for the Bay Area, of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast,
Thank
Gatsby.
you. I appreciate it.
Trans individuals face unique challenges every day. From accessing healthcare to navigating legal systems, it is crucial that we work towards creating a society that is inclusive and supportive of people of all gender identities. This means advocating for policies and practices that prioritize the health and well-being of trans individuals, as well as challenging discriminatory attitudes and behaviors where they exist. By coming together to support and uplift trans voices, we can create a brighter and more equitable future for everyone. Thank you for listening, and let us continue to work towards a world where trans individuals can thrive. Follow us on all social media platforms at TransClinique, and don't forget to like this video and hit the subscribe button.